Welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight, the show that is the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink, bane of bullies, hero to small dogs and children. Among the many things the country is reassessing 9 days after the most remarkable presidential election in memory is how so many of us in the media got it so wrong. Virtually every person with a high-paying job in Washington, New York, and Los Angeles demanded that voters not support Donald Trump for president, but they did it anyway, and we never saw it coming. Why is that? Joining us now to unravel the mystery is New York Times columnist and two-time Pulitzer Prize winner Nick Kristof. His latest column is entitled 12 Steps for Voters in Despair. Nicholas Kristof, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
So you've got this new column out, 12 Steps for people who are traumatized, as you say, by the election. And I won't go through all of them, but it's a sample: volunteer to fight Islamophobia, join the ACLU, donate to Planned Parenthood, take on sexism and misogyny, sort of all the stations of the cross of lifestyle liberalism. But there's no number 13, which is assess why this happened. Think deeply about why an event you didn't predict came to pass. Why not?
Well, actually, that is within the 12. One is to get out of our echo chambers. And so to follow people on Twitter or Facebook who do not agree with you, make sure that you have friends who disagree with you profoundly. Because if you have a friend who voted for somebody else, if you're a Clinton supporter, if you have friends who voted for Trump, it's harder to demonize that person.
But there's no suggestion of why people might have voted for Trump. Now, I read your column, so I know. I think it was in September you had this piece where you said, look who's endorsing Trump, who's behind him. You said it's the North Korean government, it's Islamic terrorists, it's the Klan, it's the American Nazi Party. It seemed very uncharitable to me. There was no room for people who are decent but economically beleaguered to maybe want to support him.
Oh, no, I mean, it's absolutely. It's a point I've made repeatedly, because my hometown, I'm from rural Oregon, Yamhill County, Oregon,
right.
A farm 4 miles out of a town of 1,000 people, and that town is overwhelmingly pro-Trump. And it's, I mean, I believe my friends and neighbors there are misguided. I think they're not going to get what they hope for. But they feel betrayed by the Democratic and Republican establishment. The economic base of that area used to be manufacturing and logging, and that went away, and they feel nobody has been speaking to them, and finally Trump has spoken to them.
But I don't notice any sympathy for them in your column. So if you're writing a column that says the people who are for Trump are Nazis and Klansmen and North Korean dictators...
No, I mean, I said precisely the opposite. I said that one can't stereotype Trump voters any more than one can stereotype anybody else. That was in that column right there.
No, but wouldn't it be useful to explain the factors that actually allowed this to happen? Like, for example, their frustration over the absolute shrinking of the middle class, the heroin epidemic, things like that. I don't see any of that.
No, but I actually had that in the first column after the election. That, for example,
I read it.
Since 1978, for the bottom half of the wealth distribution, male median wages have actually gone down. And I think that's a crucial reason, that if you're a male worker, your median wages since 1979 have actually gone down.
I'm very aware. I guess what I'm looking for is empathy. So you've traveled all around the world, famously to the worst places in the world: Darfur, Mogadishu, Ouagadougou. I'm sure.
Yeah,
probably
absolutely.
to those places much more than Modesto and Lewiston, I would imagine. I've never read a column by you that suggests the people in those places who support dictators oftentimes are racist or bad people. You would never write that about a poor person in the third world. But you're implying that about your fellow Americans.
No, I'm not, Tucker. If you look at my columns, I precisely said we have to avoid that it's important not to stereotype Trump voters. I've been taking abuse on that from my fellow liberals because, I mean, these are ideas that I believe in very powerfully, but I also think it's important not to demonize Trump voters.
Really? Because the American Nazi Party and the KKK don't really exist in a meaningful sense. They may have an office or a website, but they're not tens of thousands or millions of members.
Look.
And when you tie Trump supporters to those groups, that's a slur.
No, it's not. I mean, I think that Trump is, frankly, a bigot. I think he has a racist history. I don't think that of his supporters. And his supporters from my hometown, I understand that suffering. I've written about it repeatedly from my town.
And what solutions have you proposed?
I think it's hard, but I think education has to be at the heart of it. I don't think it's something that one can...
Well, they have schools. What does that mean, education?
I think that we underfund education for the people who most need it, that essentially affluent people in the New York suburbs get good education. In Yamhill, I don't think you get a good enough education. I think we also have to...
And you really think it's all about funding? Do you think there's evidence of that? There's social sciences support. The more you spend, the better result you get?
I think it's complicated and you can't pour money into a broken system, but I do think that money levels matter. I also think you need to create jobs, frankly. And
what kind of jobs?
So, I mean, there is pretty good social science evidence on things like career academies to present the most at-risk people and provide them with apprenticeship jobs that lead to a career. It saves money over the long term. And this is not an area that I'm not a labor economist.
But that's kind of the point I guess I'm making. I'm not sure what you mean, but
Yeah.
you've written a lot about climate change, for example.
Yeah.
You're really concerned about it. You've thought a lot about it. You've thought a lot about the suffering of people in other countries. Doesn't seem like you've thought that deeply about the suffering of your fellow Americans. You don't have the solutions you have for, say, global warming. And my question is, isn't it always easier for the elites to identify with abstractions or poor people in other countries and kind of ignore their own countrymen? I've noticed this. Have you noticed that?
I mean, I think that is I guess I'd say two things. I mean, I think that is a real problem, and I think that there is a problem in journalism that we favor lots of diversity but not economic diversity.
Yeah.
And that in whether it's Fox News or the New York Times or the Washington Post, we don't have enough folks who grew up in working class or rural communities.
Yeah. Well, we actually have, and I definitely don't want to make you defend your employer. No one should have to do that.
Right. But I would
a
also,
sincere question. Do you know anybody in the New York Times who's openly pro-life?
Yes, absolutely.
You do?
I do. And
What percentage would you say are?
I don't know. But I do, I mean, I would make the point that I've written repeatedly about the working class issues in Yamhill, Oregon. And,
Right. But I mean, out of
from my heart.
13, none of them was, hey, comfortable, smug people on the Upper West Side. Like, think about why people would have voted for the guy. That's not one of the prescriptions. Giving to Planned Parenthood?
Absolutely. Two of them are precisely about that. And I'd encourage people to go and nytimes.com, read this column, and you can see for yourself
You say get out of your bubble, but
I will avoid demonizing people who don't agree with me about this election, recognizing that it's as wrong to stereotype Trump supporters as anybody else.
you just tied them to the Klan, the Nazi
Not at
party.
all. Not at all. No. That's completely unfair reading of this.
Well,
And I encourage
unfortunately,
people to
we're
check
out
for
of
yourself
time.
and read for themselves.
Please do. Check for yourself. Nicholas Kristof, thanks a lot for joining us.
Sure.
Game
Good to be with
and
you.
I appreciate it.
Good to be in the lion's den.
Thank you. Not much of a lion.